會議鄧家彪議員。
Let's continue, Mr. Tang Ka-pil. Let me organize myself.
Well, go back to when it happened. The public were very concerned about it because first, controversy, complexity of the project. And it's the first time when Hong Kong had an XR high-speed rail, and it's a different mode of operation or management. So it's the first of its kind and is very complicated. When the CE in Council made a decision that it was to go ahead, you engaged Lloyds, who gave you a recommendation, and you accepted the recommendation, and that's the approach taken. Is that right? Mr. Y. Lloyds only looked at monitoring for us. The Highways Department at that time considered two options. First, for the Highways Department to engage a consultant to implement the project or to get the MTRC to do it. We wanted to find out, what if we asked MTRC to do it? Should we use their own project management system or the government's project management system? Of course, each option has their own pros and cons. If we use the government system, that means the MTRC will have to make changes and learn our system. After we have considered the pros and cons of the two options, we asked the Lloyds to look into the MTRC system to see what the difference are and what monitoring work we need to do. The Lloyds suggested that we use the monitoring and verification approach. So it's not the Highways Department to find a contractor. They commissioned the MTRC to do it, but they would adopt the MTRC. They would have to decide whether to use the MTRC system or the government system. And before you decided, you asked Lloyds to make a recommendation, and they have given you an additional advice, which is check the checker. And we see the result, which is the current framework. It's not just that we want to seek their views. We asked Lloyds to get into the MTRC system to find out how it worked and how it's different from the government system. And they're also asked to make some recommendations about monitoring. So when you were working out the monitoring system, does it mean that the government asked you, Mr. White, to make the decision? You were given the full power. Mr. White? The government's practice is not to find one particular person to do it. It would be a team. We sought the views of Lloyds and we discussed it with the Bureau to see if this monitoring mechanism was to be adopted, and in the end it's decided that we would. There is still one member, Mr. Frankie Yik, from the first round. If there are no others, then we will start with the second round to begin with Mr. Gary Fan. Mr. Frankie Yik. If I've asked inappropriate questions, please stop me. I have a number of questions to ask. Well, the government can choose not to answer. In paragraph 6 of this witness statement, it says that according to EA2, the NTRCL shall use its best endeavors, which has a legal meaning. And it continues to say that the MTRCL should consult and liaise with the government in a timely manner. So, do you personally think that the MTRCL had used its best endeavors and had consulted and liaised with the government in a timely manner? Mr. Y. Mr. Y, could you please move closer to the microphone? As I mentioned previously, when I was still in office, that is before June 2010, my assessment was that the MTRCL has used its best endeavors and has at the right time raised the issues with the government and proposed solutions. In paragraph 16 of the witness statement, it's rarely seen that it's stated this way. It says that as the XRL is a fast-track project, and I've read from some press report that perhaps the initial assessments were too optimistic. And so, well, the delay happened for a reason, because it simply couldn't be completed in 2015. Do you agree with that? Mr. Y, at the beginning of the hearing, I have explained about the decision of the completion date. With the information we had at that time, we were of the view that the setting of the date was fully justified. My next question is similar to that of Mr. Tan Ka-Piu. With the EA, well, you engaged Lloyd's, and Lloyd's view was that it was well known the MTRCL's practice was in line with international best practice and proved to be very effective. Would it be the case that it would give the impression that since they have been doing really well and is well recognized and they have exported technology overseas, so, well, it's not for them to cast doubts? Would that be the impression? Mr. Y, it's difficult for me to pass judgment on the decision or the views of my successors. Indeed, the Lloyds think that the MTRCL has reached professional standard and as well known in the trade. Let me ask it from a different direction. Since it's well known to be the best, well, there is no need to doubt their practice then. Would it be the case, Mr. Y? When I was in office, well, we might not think that it was the best, but it was a company of a high quality. Still, we would not give it free rein. And as a result, as I've previously mentioned on a number of occasions, we have designed a 4-tier monitoring mechanism to ensure we have sufficient monitoring capacity. Paragraph 30 of your statement, it says that the MTRCL, if in the event of errors or omissions which constitutes breaches of the EA, and as a result, re-execution is required, the MTRCL shall do it at its own cost. So has there been any occasions that that they have been asked to re-execute at their own cost any part of the project? Mr. Y, not in my term. And it says that if the extent has exceeded the scope of modification or adjustments, well, has it reached this point, Mr. Y? It's very difficult for me to comment on what happened after I've left my post. That is, in relation to the delay and the extent of the delay and how serious they are, is difficult for me to comment on it. As we all know that the target cannot be made and is well known in Hong Kong. So do you think that it has exceeded what you expected? Yes, there is a difference between the set target and the physical progress. And as to what is mentioned in paragraph 31, we have to first find out the reasons for the delay before we can work out the extent of the delay. Paragraph 33, it says that under the Public Finance Ordinance, the controlling officer, which is the director for the XRL project shall be responsible and accountable for all expenditure for the XRL. I don't understand, because Lloyds asked you to take the approach of check the checker. It seems that the responsibility and accountability rests with the MTRCL, but here it says that it's the director who is held responsible. Who actually is it? Under the Public Finance Ordinance, it's the director. What the MTRCL is responsible for is the project management. About the cost overrun and the delay and why it happened, we first have to find out the reasons before we find out who is to be held responsible. Mr. Yik, so you're still looking into who is to be held responsible? Yes, thank you. That's all I want to ask. We finished with the first round. Second round, Mr. Gary Fan. Thank you. I want to ask Mr. Y. You said a number of times, even when not prompted, that you have not done anything, you have not committed any mistakes, and you said that the government worked together with the MTRCL with a common goal. And when there is a delay, according to your understanding, that when you were the director, the completion date was reasonable, and I asked whether there was a failure in monitoring, and you said on a number of occasions that the multi-tier monitoring mechanism is sufficient. But what we can see objectively is a delay. And as to whether there is cost overrun, you have taken us around the bush. You said that first, the reasons for the delay had to be identified, and objectively, yes, there is cost overrun. Let me ask you again. The MTRCL said that there is unforeseen underground condition to explain about the serious delay. In other words, now there is still a gaping hole in the West Kowloon terminus site, and the MTRCL used unexpected ground condition to explain for that. And in the geological report in 2009, 97, and a further site investigation report in 2010, and this problem has been identified, and that means it has been identified before the start of the project. Why do you still think that it is not a failure, a misjudgment in your professional capacity? There has been 3 investigation reports. You only mentioned the last one, that is the golf driving range and the Pt2 investigation report. It's the only one that was not completed before you left your post, but the other 2 have been completed. And the MTRCL now said that the ground condition is unforeseen. Mr. Y. Mr. Y. Well, I cannot answer for MTRCL when they say that the underground condition is unforeseen. So do you think it's right or not? No, it's not for me to decide. And they use boreholes to do the site investigation. So the condition of that particular point, it was investigated into.
Let's say it's 100,000 cubic meters of rock. Then what's the distribution? Is it in line with the estimation in the geological report? Very often it's different, because we only have information on different spots in the report. And the distribution is not something I am in the know. So I don't know what is unforeseen. Is it the distribution of rocks, or is it because of the amount? So you can confirm that the MTRCL was aware of the rocks, the rock stratum. Yes. There was a report compiled by the KCLC in 1997. I'm surprised that Mr. Y says he doesn't know whether it's right or wrong. I have this question, and then I have a third question, and that would be all my questions. According to the IEP, before the XRL project was launched or implemented, there was no comprehensive implementation strategy, so that at the time the THB and the MTRC could not record in detail the respective roles that they play. And in the second report, it says that there's no performance monitoring. You had an independent expert saying that there was an 11-month slippage, and still you could not intervene, or you did not take appropriate monitoring measures to alert the MTRCL. Why did you say that there were a multi-tiered monitoring mechanism and that you make no mistake? Chairman, I cannot comment on the period of slippage in the 11 months. I was in my post. According to the IEP appointed by the government, the RDO of the Highways Department did not make sufficient preparation so that they can play the role of check the checker. That's the report of the IEP appointed by the government. There was no implementation strategy. I wasn't involved in the IEP report. At that time, there was the comprehensive monitoring mechanism. If utilized effectively, it would have been very effective in monitoring the progress. Mr. Gary Fang, I want to ask a question about the design of the terminus building. In July 2011, the government made a report to the Subcommittee on Railways. At that time, the foundation of the West Kowloon terminus was progressing as scheduled, and there was the need to finalize the design of the terminus. At that time, the design was not yet finalized. Mr. Y, in relation to the design of the counters for the co-location of boundary facilities, before you left the post of Director of Highway, did the government have a finalized or have a timetable to finalize the design of the terminus so that you can avoid the problem of having to redesign the terminus causing delays? Did the design of the terminus cause the delay? As Mr. Fan has said, the design was still ongoing after I had left my post. When it comes to co-location of cross-boundary facilities, the space required would be higher than not having co-location of facilities. So this factor alone should not cause the delay. There may be other factors involved. I cannot judge. Before you left the post, you failed to answer this question, whether we have one co-location or no location. There was no timetable set before you left the post. No, not according to my knowledge. There was no such practice. Chairman, I have further questions about contingency fees. I think that in the original timetable and also budget estimate, the government was too optimistic, or the government underestimated the complexity of the rock stratum problem and also the difficulty arising from that. So when an application was submitted to this council, the contingency was set too low, and then after the project had been launched, what we could do was to provide additional funding or supplementary funding. Do you agree, Mr. Y, that this is an objective fact? At first, you were the completion date was set under an overly optimistic basis, and you did not apply for a big enough contingency fee when the funding application was submitted to this council? Mr. White, I've explained time and again how the completion date or the construction time was set. When I left my post, 11 contracts have been awarded. When it comes to tender prices and the estimates that we have, there was a difference of 9%. It was 9% lower than what we estimated, according to my colleagues in the Highways Department. The prices quoted were lower, 11% lower. And after all the E&M contracts were awarded, the total price was some 20% lower than our estimate. So from these figures, we can tell that the contingency fee allowed was reasonable at that stage. Then why are we having cost overruns? I don't have sufficient information to answer this particular question. Mr. Tan Ka-pil. For this round, I'm going to follow up with the previous questions. I just want to explore the facts. The director at that time had to handle these politically controversial projects. If I were you, I would say that this would be the most difficult projects that I had handled. When you were the director, what other projects, important projects, road projects did you handle? If off the top of my head you want me to answer this question, it's not going to be easy. And I worked in this field for decades. I handled the 5 bridges, also the core infrastructure projects of Hong Kong. So I did handle many important infrastructure projects in Hong Kong. As for the XRL project, as Mr. Tang puts it, it's controversial. I did give a very detailed account in some newspaper and in this council on the controversies. And it's not for the department to handle the matter alone. It's done with the Bureau. This will be the first fully underground railway project in Hong Kong. There's a team. It's not just a job for the department. We devoted a lot of resources to it. When it comes to the monitoring mechanism, you said some moments ago that it would be up to the Highways Department, and the Highways Department appointed lawyers to carry out an in-depth consultancy study, and that's how the present arrangement came about. So you had to make a fresh start. You and your directorate colleagues would have to set it up, or did you refer to past projects and you wanted to adopt the same approach of engaging a consultant, and then what you had to do is to listen to the consultant's advice? Mr. Y, well, we selected a consultant with sufficient experience after assessment. Every project is unique in its own way, and also that's true of the XRL. It is unique in its own way. I believe past project management experience can be applied to the XRL project. I don't think the monitoring mechanism is so special that it's beyond the grasp of ordinary people. For this XRL project monitoring mechanism, this 4-tier mechanism, this check arrangement, was it applied for the first time? Yes. So it's the first time, and you decided to adopt this approach. Now we have Jacob, China. At the time of designing the system, was Jacob's China responsible to, reporting to the department. In 2013, the Jacobs China stated categorically that the slippage had become more serious, and they reported to the Highways Department faithfully. So the consultant played its role. The consultant told you its assessment as it was, and after the department was informed by the consultant of the problem, was it the responsibility of the department, the Highways Department, to report to the Bureau or to talk to the MTRCL? What's the role played by the department? Chairman, that happened after I had left the post. Can you tell us what happened during your term? When I was in the post, there was no such occurrence. As I stated in paragraph 8 and paragraph 9, when there was slippage, we would talk to our own team on the impact of the slippage and whether it would be necessary to report to the Bureau. And also, in accordance with the 4-tier checking mechanism, we would try to get information from different sources and make a final decision. When you were in post, these 4-tier checking monitoring mechanism was considered effective? Yes. And now it's not working. Do you share this observation? I can answer this question. Whether the 4-tier mechanism has been made ineffective. The system is around. How do you use the system? How do you utilize it? Depends on how the team make use of it. It's known that in the RDO, there's a 15-member professional team to monitor the XRL. They are all government employees in the Highways Department. What are the terms of reference for the team? When you took over, did you give them clear instructions, or did you draw their attention to any particular matters? There were the 15 civil engineers. Lois looked into the project management of MTRCL system. After the assessment, Lois proposed setting up such a team, a management team. And after our own assessments, we decided to set up the team. The responsibility of the team was to do the monitoring and the verification. After I left, the team was set up and was up and running. So I did not write down anything to draw their attention to any particular matters, because they already knew the details of the project. Did such a team? Did you have other teams in the Highways Department? Did we have similar teams? Well, from time to time we set up special teams for special projects. Mr. Lo Wai Kwok, thank you, Chairman. According to the IEP panel, we have this quote. In the setting of the benchmark, there should be quantitative risk adjustment in respect of costs and programming. This will make sure that the time allocated and also contingency fees will be able to cover the very complicated matters and also foreseen and unforeseen risk factors, and to make sure that the implementation is more sound and robust.
And a lot of questions asked today covers the unforeseen conditions, say for example the underground condition, geological condition, but it's specifically mentioned in the independent expert panel. So can Mr. Y cast his mind back when they set the baseline scenario, when they were working out the completion date, the budget, they have not done a sufficient quantitative risk assessment. I believe that is not the case, that they have not considered it at all. But if Mr. Y has considered it, can you give me the details? According to the MTRCL, the cost overrun and the delay was a result of unforeseen conditions. We're talking about a mega project. Indeed, there would be foreseen risks and unforeseen conditions. So the quantitative risk assessment, as mentioned by the panel, should be well catered for any mega project. Mr. Y, in his previous answer, said that they have given sufficient consideration of all the factors. But given the specific comment of the panel, I'd like to hear more from Mr. Y. When you were in office, did you conduct a quantitative risk assessment, and by whom? It was done by the MTRC. We engaged Lloyd's to do its work to consider MTRCL's project management system and that of the government, and to decide which one was to use, and if we were going to use the MTRCL one, what monitoring was to be added. In the 1990s and in the year 2000s, we have done some analysis on risks. We've compared Lloyd's recommendations, the MTRCL system and our system. Well, we realized that the MTRCL has a risk assessment. That's why we asked the MTRCL to do such an assessment. Mr. Y, can you be more specific? Say, for example, when the risk assessment was conducted, when it comes to the geological condition, as far as you know, what the MTRCL has done in risk assessment, whether you have to decide the risk level and possible remedial measures. Yes, the MTRC has some information gathered from site investigation. But as Mr. Y said, it would be information related to just a specific point and not the entire site. So there is a risk. So when it comes to contingency measures and remedial measures, of course, the MTRCL has to do something. Can Mr. Y supply us more information in relation to the risk assessment conducted by the MTRC? I can't answer off the top of my head. I will have to dig up the information afterwards. So please supply a written answer to the Secretariat. I will have to first look whether I have the information. Yes, no problem. please supply us with supplementary information after the meeting. Well, there is this comment by the independent expert panel. It seems that the quantitative risk assessment is deemed insufficient. That's implied. The underground condition is a prime example. So, yes, I expect a supplementary written answer after the meeting. Mr. Low, you would like to get information about the comprehensive risk or risk assessment targeting underground condition. Not about everything. As I said, maybe use the underground condition as an example. Give us the work of quantitative risk assessment. Can you use this as an example to show that whether there was sufficient risk assessment done? So it is in relation to the underground condition. Yes, I will find the information. Mr. Low, may I say once again that I don't want all the information and all the details of the underground condition risk assessment. I just want you to use it as an example to explain whether the risk assessment done was sufficient and whether there was insufficient consideration for the baseline parameter. Mr. Tony Jie, I would like to follow up on a question or two. Mr. Y, in 2010 June, you left the post of the director for highways. And for a period of time, Mr. Y, you said that you knew about delays in individual contracts. Mr. Y, can you recall when you became aware of the delay? And did the information come from the XRL, your team, or the consultant Jacobs? As I mentioned that Jacobs was not yet commissioned. When I left, the process to identify a consultant has just been started. We got the information from the information supplied by the MTRCL in the form of a report submitted to the PSC. Was that in April? According to Mr. Y, the last meeting was not chaired by you. That is the one in June. So can you remember the month? I may not be able to tell you the month, but in paragraph 9 it says that in the monthly progress report in September, a problem was identified about, and I know that Choi Yun Chun has always been a problem. So from your recollection, the delay was identified the delay surfaced before June 2010. And in April 2010, the subcommittee on matters relating to railways, the government agreed that once every 6 months, they would give us a report of the progress of work and the financial situation on the XRL Hong Kong section. The first 6 months report, as at the 30th of June, was till the 30th of June 2010. And in relation to this first half yearly report, it says that the contract is still within budget and awarded on time. According to Mr. Y, there were 11 contracts, and the budget and the amount awarded the amount awarded was within the budget, and there were no signs that there was cost overrun or delay. The MTRCL reckon there might be a 6 months delay from the mainland section, and this was not mentioned at all in the report. I don't know if Mr. Y was involved in the first half-yearly report, because that report was till the 30th of June 2010. So I don't know whether Mr. Y was involved. Well, Mr. Y mentioned about a delay, but the report did not mention it. So do you think that the report tried to conceal it? Well, from my recollection, I have already left and I did not participate in the compilation of the report. By delay, I believe was that there was no sign of delay in the entire project. But for individual contracts, there were signs of delay. But since it was still the beginning, it's very likely that they would be recovered. Mr. Y said that, well, from the experience of a mega project, and he said that he did not participate in writing the first half-yearly report. Mr. Y, you think that there was delay, but if you had participated in the half-yearly report, would you have mentioned it in the half-yearly report? Mr. Y, I think it's about the depth of the report. If you're looking at the overall situation, then there may not be the need to mention delay in individual contracts, because it may not affect the overall progress, especially when it was the beginning of the project. So whether it was mentioned or not, it would not make much of a difference. So there were delays in some contracts before you left the post. That is the case. Next, Mr. Wu Chi-Wai. Thank you. In Mr. Y's answer in the last session, he kept saying that the system is inflexible and people are flexible. If that is the case, when he reads the information, of course he relies on his professional judgment. But is it related to experience in the operation of railway? So the person's experience would have a bearing on the judgment made. So is it the case? Is it the design of the system that it doesn't really matter whether the person has any experience? Well, there are people with relevant experience in the team. But in the team, prior to your successor taking over, he has no experience in managing major railway projects, and you would have retired. So who is the most experienced person in the team? Yes, the incumbent director may not have direct railway management experience, but he has professional experience and he can take into account the experience and professional advice given by the team.
Mr. Wai says experience with major railway projects will be relevant to the decision making, to the judgment. I was asking about the team that existed at the time. Mr. Wai, when you set up the team, within the team, apart from you yourself, who you are very experienced, what other colleagues are experienced enough to handle this project? Apart from me, we have the deputy director, assistant director, and a chief engineer with experience in managing railway projects. In IEP report, it says that in the arrangement, there's no mechanism to assess the performance of MTRCL. Mr. White says the 4-tier checking monitoring mechanism will cover all relevant aspects. What is the monitoring mechanism in this regard? And that is the ability of the MTRCL and performance of MTRCL in implementing the project. Do you have a mechanism to monitor this? Well, under the mechanism, we would actually get into the MTRCL system to participate in project management. If MTRCL doesn't perform, we would our representative would point out the matter, the problem. So if that's the identify what is the reporting procedure involved, back to the department. Or would the MTRCL just take on board the observation in its work? As I said, during my term, I was of the view that the MTRCL was performing. We don't need a specific mechanism for that, but under the 4-tier monitoring mechanism, our colleague can point out problems anytime they are found. So in monitoring the performance of MTRCL, you also rely on this 4-tier monitoring mechanism? That's correct. In the EA2, in the second EA, according to the IEP, maybe Mr. White can say something about that. If the MTRCL's performance or cost controlled was not satisfactory compared with the your estimate, was there a mechanism to urge the MTRCL to do a better job? Chairman, I mentioned that there are 4 tiers in the check in the monitoring mechanism. We participated in the tendering assessment of the MTRCL or also the project reporting meetings, cost control meetings, and there's also contract review meetings on adjustments and claims related to contracts. So we have participated in the project control groups and their meetings. If the monitoring team identify problems, and if the MTRCL did not accept government's proposals and comments, how's the problem handled? So when the government discovers some problems, when your monitoring team discovers something and asks something to be done and it was ignored by the MTRCL, well, how would that be handled? Are you asking whether the government was entitled to intervene? Well, actually, we had already intervened. I mentioned that one of the features is that we already enter the project control mechanism of MTRCL. What if your suggestion was not accepted by the MTRCL? How can that be rectified? Well, different professionals may have different ideas. Well, we're talking about the mechanism. There must be something in the contract to alert you to such problems, and the problem will have to be resolved somehow. Usually it's through the discussion and talks between professionals. I cannot imagine that we will totally ignore MTRCL's proposals and they would ignore ours. It would be resolved through a process of discussion. But the delays accumulated over time. It was a few months, and then gradually the slippage became more serious, and the delay for a longer period. According to the IEP report, it seems that the government's proposals went nowhere or were not taken on board, and there's no mechanism in the time to inform the authority or the Transport and Housing Bureau saying that the delay was serious or so serious. And also in April 2014, when the announcement was about to be made that there will be a delay of the completion date, the secretary said he was taken aback. That's why we asked this question. And now the Mr. White is saying that it's all covered by the monitoring mechanism. Chairman, it's difficult for me to answer questions for problems that happened after my term. According to the incumbent director, whenever the incumbent director asks for responses from the MTRCL when problems were identified, he always got a response. I did not participate in in monitoring the project after I had left, so I cannot comment. Whether the MTRCL responded or did not respond to your suggestions, what is the mechanism for taking back the issues to the system? Well, the mechanism is not flexible. It's inflexible. Information is also not flexible. We have to find ways to use the information and the mechanism well. The mechanism cannot handle all details. It's handled by people when there are problems. The most important thing is that the people utilizing the mechanism should flexibly utilize the information and find solutions. So if it's a problem with people, all the participants, all the professional people participating in the monitoring of XRL, were they not responsible for making independent assessments, and the information should be fed back to the permanent secretary and the THB, or every colleague shoulder some responsibility when there's a problem? They will have to be responsible for the problem with their work. If the team could not provide an independent assessment to the permanent secretary and the THB, it's duty of direction of duty. Mr. White, it's difficult for me to answer this question. If a colleague hasn't done the job he's supposed to do, then it's of course a direction of duty. I agree with you that the system and the information are both inflexible, but people are flexible. But if the information received is incomplete, would your judgment be affected as a result? Yes. That's why I've stressed that we need 4 different tiers in the monitoring mechanism. We would like to give that information from different sources that have many meetings and many sources of information. If the information obtained doesn't tally, that it will give you an alarm warning. So we need to make the best use of the 4 tiers to ensure smooth implementation. But there's only one source That is from MTRCL, right? No, under the 4 tiers monitoring mechanism, we get information from the MTRCL. We also have people send and join the MTRCL system, and we can get information that. And also there's the independent consultant who could get information from contractors, and we also pay site inspections. If we get information which was different from the MTRCL, we could also try to check and verify. That's all for second round. The third round, Mr. Tan Ka-piu. I'll be brief. It seems that no one has asked this question. Before you left the post of Director of Highways, when you were Director, you spent a lot of time in handling this XRL project, and also in setting up the monitoring mechanism. Mr. Lau Ka-keung, the incumbent Director, he has always been a road project official. Before you left, did Mr. Lau Ka-keung participate in your team? Was he a member? He was not a member. So from the first stage, investigation, from advanced preparation, the drafting of EA1 and EA2, the commissioning of lawyers to carry out a consultancy study, the setting of the monitoring mechanism, up to the point of the implementation of the XRL project, Mr. Lau Ka-keung was not involved in any stage. At that time, there was a deputy director acting as director. When Mr. Lau Ka-keung assumed the post of the director, the deputy director assisted him. What's the name of that deputy director? Mr. Wen Man-nong. So he is a crucial official in the process. He participated in the XRL project, and he should faithfully report to Mr. Lau Ka-keung, the new director, that this is how it came about, and the intent and purpose of having the mechanism. Is that correct? Yes. I want to clarify a point concerning the information flow. Are you saying that Jacobs China Limited can bypass MTRCL and get information from contractors? Did you mean that? Yes. Other members, any further questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Y. Thank you for coming to our hearing and give us assistance. If necessary, we may recall you. I hope that will not be necessary. You may now be excused. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. Let's have an internal meeting in room 3. Or rather, room 4.